is Chelsea and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, we're going to be going over my May wrap-up. So I have 12 books to show you guys today, and so we're going to get right on into it. The first 5 books that I have to show you guys today are actually part of a series. The 5th book came out on May 4th, and I was very excited to read it. This is one of my favorite series, favorite authors. She's a self-published author, and so I am amazed with the work that she has done by herself without a major publisher. But it is also a self-published work, so pretty much you read the new books on ebook, but she does also have some of the older ones as hard copy books. So the first book that I read this month was Trying to Live with the Dead by B.L. Brunnemer. This is the first book in the Veil Diaries series. Oh my gosh, so much glare. This is a book that I absolutely love. I'm going to get into a little bit of plot details, but not anything that will spoil you guys. The first book here follows our main character of Lexi, who has just moved in with her uncle because of some family issues. And she is not a normal teenage girl, and I know that can make people cringe with that sentence, but the main reason is because she can see the dead. This is I want to say more maybe urban fantasy or paranormal sort of book. This is a world where pretty much everything is normal except for the fact that she can see ghosts. This is a fact that has taken over her life. Because anytime that she sees them, she gets these adverse reactions that could be bad for her health, and it seems like in previous towns she has been ostracized once people learn that she's not exactly like other people. She ends up meeting a group of guys her first day of school, and they also seem to have some problems in their life that they are overcoming, and it's just a really, really good story. I absolutely love B.L. Brunnemer's world building as well as the characterization of all the characters in it. Their relationships between friendship and everything is just amazing. I have personally read this book, I want to say at least 6 times since it first came out in December of, I believe it was 2016. And I do want to let you guys know that this is one of those self-published books where every so often there will be typos. The author is open to information on these, so she does have a specific survey or page where if you find anything that she might have missed, you can send it to her. I noticed that there was more typos in the original first book, like the ebook version. There have been updates since then. There's even more updates on the actual print books that are out, but there was more typos in the first book, and it got less and less as the series progressed. The author also has made great strides in her writing style as well. Having read the first 4 books previously and then rereading them again so that I could read the 5th book in May, I noticed a great difference in this first book. I'm still giving it 5 stars because I absolutely love the characters and the story, and this is one of those books that I could not put down. However, if I was going to re-rate it now, I might make it a little bit lower, like a 4, maybe a 4.5, only because I do notice that the writing style on some of this is not as great as it could have been. However, again, I'm still giving this a 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. I still love it now. And this writer has progressed so much as well throughout the series that rereading this book, I can see more flaws in it than I did when it was her first and only work. But that just shows how much she's been improving and how great this story is in general. The second book in this series is When the Dead Come A-Knockin'. This one here is a chunker of a book. Most of her books are really, really long, which I absolutely love. This one again follows Lexi and her group of friends after they realize that she can see the dead. So I'm not really going to give you guys any spoilers there. However, in this group, they're dealing with a little bit more of real life drama as well. The boys pretty much all have girlfriends, and she has a new boyfriend, and they do have paranormal issue drama still, but it also brings in that real life, almost like a teenage contemporary story, and I felt it had a really, really good mix of everything. Again, this is a long book. It's a good series. It's going to be a long series as well, so if you guys don't mind slow burn romance for a little bit of it as well, it's a really, really great series. I absolutely love these books. Again, this one has a little bit of typos throughout. If they're not going to throw you off the story, I think you should really try it. Book 3 is When to Fear the Living. This one here, I do want to say, has a little bit of a trigger warning. Nothing too much, just a little bit of stalking and that kind of thing. There is a little bit more that I don't want to spoil, so if you are afraid of going into this without knowing what it is, either message me, or the author does have a Facebook group and everybody is super nice on there. They would totally let you know that, as well as the author actually even letting you know what it is. Before this book came out, she let everybody know there was going to be some sort of trigger in this, and if you were afraid of going into it or cautious of going into it without knowing what it was, to let her know, and she would let you know exactly what it dealt with. This one, again, is a really, really good book. There's still the paranormal aspect, and I can't get into it more because by the time we get into the second book and this one, there is a whole big paranormal problem. It doesn't really take over the series, but it becomes a major issue that I don't really want to get into without you reading the first couple books first. But again, this one does have a little bit more of the real life problems as well because of that trigger warning. I do think the author is really, really good about how she portrays everything in these stories. I've been giving everything that I've read from her a 5 in this series. Even in the first book, she talks about triggers and how they are legitimate issues and how some of her characters have them. And then the fourth one is Whispers from the Dead. This was originally going to be a novella, like a 3.5 book. However, this is considered our fourth one. It is a little bit smaller than the rest, but it is still over 200 pages. This one here follows up directly after the events of book 3 and deals a little bit more with the after effects of the triggering event in here. So I'm not going to get too much into this. Just know that I still love this series. Absolutely gave this book a 5. And again, I feel like she handled everything perfectly. Whatever issues arose in book 3 did not go away overnight in this book. I personally believe uses a lot of tact. And so this is, again, really, really good. Gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. And then the last book is still an ebook because of the fact that it just came out in May, and that is When Evil Comes to Play. This one here blew all of the rest out of the water. I mean, again, I absolutely love the series, love the books, gave them all 5 stars, but this one had so much action and depth and character building, and it took the paranormal aspect up like 5 notches. You can't even really expect what's going to happen until you go into it. I absolutely loved it. We've been learning more about Lexi and her powers through each book, pretty much as soon as she's learning about her powers. And this book was so good. Again, because it's the 5th book in the series, I can't really give you guys like any sort of synopsis beyond the main overall arcing of the series. But it had me on the edge of my seat the entire time. I was so invested in these characters, and there were some big twists and turns and character moments that I was surprised with, but I was loving at the same time. The one good thing I love about this author is she does not give cliffhangers between her books. Whatever problem is the major problem in the book gets resolved by the end, even though we do still have open-ended threads that continue into the series. She is really good about that. So book 5 is an intense, wild ride, but you will get your like major conclusion before the last page. Again, I just absolutely love this author's work. She is one of my favorites. Absolutely love it. I did then read one more full completed series this month. I started with Jackaby by William Ritter. I gave this book 4 stars. This is a book that is billed as a cross between Doctor Who and Sherlock, and I do feel like it pretty much lives up to that billing of it. We have 2 sort of main characters. Everything in this story is told by the character of Abigail Rook. She is sort of like our John Watson in this, as in the fact that she is pretty much taking their adventures and writing them down in book form to like give to the public. So this is her telling the story after it happened. Jackaby is sort of like our Sherlock character, although he does not actually see things like Sherlock does. He sees more fantasy paranormal aspects, like ghosts, and auras of people's trails and which ones are monsters and that kind of thing. This first book here is when Abigail is new to town. She is from England and she ends up in America. This all takes place in 1800s New England. As soon as she arrives, there is a crazy murder that happens in their town. She is actually on her first day of work as Jackaby's new assistant because she needed some sort of work to do. Jackaby is under fire a little bit as being the murderer, and he swears it is an inhumane creature that has done the deed. There are so many good aspects of this. I do feel like this book is a little bit campy, which is why I gave it a 4 stars. It was a little bit predictable. I knew exactly the whodunit about, I want to say maybe 1/3 to halfway through, but that did not detract any enjoyment from the book. It was a really, really good ride. I do feel like the writing style at the very beginning of the book felt a little bit older, which I don't like as much, like when people try and write something in the time period that it came from. However, it stopped feeling like that pretty quickly, probably around the time that I sort of figured out what was going on, and it just became a normal sort of young adult written story. But I absolutely liked this one, and so I really wanted to pick up the next book in this series, which I did. That was The Beastly Bones, again by William Ritter. I gave this book another 4 stars. This one follows Abigail and Jackaby as they hear of a like dinosaur paleontology dig. Abigail's background actually is in the fact that her father is an archaeologist and does that kind of stuff as well. So they go off and examine that, but there is some sort of creature hanging around, destroying evidence and stealing things and making just havoc for everybody. So again, gave this 4 stars. Again, I guessed the ending before it happened, but it was sort of campy, really fun. Absolutely love this one. I'm glad that we got the chance to have Abigail as our main character instead of Jackaby, just because she does seem to be the one that's a little bit more down to earth, but she also does seem to be a little bit more into the clue finding than he is as well. I love the fact that they have some side characters in this series in general that show up in each book, specifically Charlie, who showed up in the first book and shows up in this book as well. I just absolutely love that. I love the little tiny details that if you're reading it, you're going to love finding in the next book. And then I also read the third book. This is Ghostly Echoes. This one I believe is actually my favorite book of the series. This one starts to turn around from the campiness of the first 2 books. This one here actually follows a murder of the ghost Jenny, who's actually in Jackaby's house. We learn a little bit about her in the first book. She's not really in the second, but this is her main story here. She was murdered years before Jackaby got the house, and we have no idea about that. So this book here pretty much takes us into the murder mystery case for her. There is a big backstory on it. There are tiny little details that have shown up in some of the other books that you don't actually know about until here. I absolutely love the story. It gave me much more of a connection between Abigail and Jenny as friends, but also just the extra characters in general. I absolutely love this one. Gave it like a 4.5, I want to say. I don't think it was a perfect 5 for me, but this is my favorite book in the series. And then the last book is The Dire King. This is the final book in the series. I gave this one a 3.5. I actually think it was my least favorite book of the series. I loved the beginning of it. This one here follows directly after the conclusion of the third book. So this one, again, is not campy at all either. It has more of that murder mystery element coming into it, but also there is a big war brewing between the human world, the supernatural world, all that kind of stuff. My biggest issue with this is I felt the ending was a little bit of a letdown. I loved the journey that I took from book 1 all the way to this one, but by the end, I feel it was just a little bit rushed. If this book could have been a little bit longer, I feel like the author could have given me what I was expecting from it or what I was wanting from it more. This one here had a big sort of war at the end. There were people and creatures getting hurt and dying, but everything was happening so fast that we didn't get any sort of closure or emotion from any of the main characters. I might have to reread this again eventually and see if my feelings change a little bit, because I do think everything up to about halfway through this book was really, really good, but then I just felt a big disconnect from everything else that was happening. We weren't in the middle of the battle, we were on a side thing, like a side confrontation, and so everything that was happening in this book just felt like we were seeing it through a fogged window. It was very hard to make out, and I felt detached from a lot of the things. Otherwise, really, really good series. If you guys are into either Doctor Who or Sherlock, I do think you guys should give this a try. And that was also the first book in my Shelf Love Crate readathon. I will leave that link down below in case you guys are interested in that. But I do have 3 more books to show you guys for this month. These were all part of the Shelf Love Crate readathon as well, so I'm going to give you guys a quick summary on these. I read Illwind. This is the first book in the Weather Warden series by Rachel Kane. I gave this book a 4 stars out of 5. This one here is an interesting novel. I read the Revivalist series by Rachel Kane before. It's a 3-book series about like the main girl becoming a type of zombie, and it just was amazing. This one here I think has a lot of potential, and I'm very interested to start the 2nd book in the series, but it did have a lot of weather going on, which, I mean, it makes sense with the type of series it is. But what it is there are people in this world who can control certain elements. Not everybody can do it, but there are people that can control the earth, people that can control fire, and then people that can control the weather, which is water and air. So in this series, our main character of Joanne is pretty much accused of killing a co-worker and has to go on the run. We as the readers don't actually know what is happening for most of the book, and I think that's where I was getting a little bit lost in my feelings for this, because I still did like the characters. I liked most of what was happening, especially once we actually learned what happened before we started reading this, when the murder took place. But the ending also ended on a very interesting note. I can't tell you anything about it because it's sort of a big twist in this book, but that does lead me to believe that I'm probably gonna like the 2nd book and maybe the rest of the series a little bit more, because it has more elements that are gonna go into the 2nd book that I like, whereas this one was more of a like, I'm trying to escape something sort of book. It was a runaway book, and while I did like it, it's not my favorite type of book. Then I also picked up Brightly Burning by Alexa Dawn. This one I'm going to give 3 stars. This I received in a Shelf Love Crate unboxing that I actually did in May, so it's one of my most recent books. And this is a Jane Eyre retelling in space. I have never read Jane Eyre. I don't really like classical novels very much, and for me personally, I absolutely love sci-fi. But I love the whole like adventure in space and found families and finding other civilizations or new planets and that kind of thing. And this was pretty much literally Jane Eyre in space. There was no really good action. There was no big inciting event. There was nothing unexpected. It was all just our main character going to be a governess in a sort of rich family, even though technically they're like people on a spaceship. There is maybe a conspiracy like 3/4 of the way through the book, but again, I just never really felt any urgency in this. There was nothing going on for most of it. It was a lot of speculation but no action, and for me personally, that's just not something that I'm interested in. I'm sure there are plenty of people that would love this, but I didn't feel the sci-fi aspect really from it, except for the fact that they were on a spaceship. I felt this was more of a contemporary type of story that probably would have been more suited to an older time period. And then the ending, again, was just one of those books that felt very rushed. I felt this could have had a really, really good ending if we had more time for it, but I think we got time jumps near the end to sort of show their progress, which is fine, but again, I never had a chance to really get connected to what was happening at the end. It just rushed by way too quickly. So I am giving this a 3 stars this month. And then the last book I read is Tanabata Wish by Sarah Fujimura. This is a book that I picked up at Phoenix Comic Fest. Again, I will link that down below in case you guys are interested. But I bought a lot of self-published books. So this is another book that the authors self-published themselves. This one here follows our main character of Skylar, who is a Caucasian American who, with her family, is sort of being shipped off to Japan for the summer. She is not happy about that because it's the summer before her senior year of high school, and she gets more of a sort of has to learn about their culture here. In this story, our character's family is her Caucasian American mother, her stepfather who is Japanese, and her 2 younger siblings who are biracial. In this story, it is more of a contemporary romance. The author is another Caucasian American woman who is married to a Japanese guy, and I felt a little bit of a connection with her because of the fact that I am married to a Chinese man, and we both wanted to see more Asian characters being the love interest. I like to see other races be the main character or the main love interest, so I was very excited to pick this up. I am giving this, I'm still debating, I think it's going to be a 3.5, very, very close to a 4, so maybe like a 3.75. I liked this story. I liked what the author was trying to do with this. This book even has an honorable mention for the Freeman Award, which is an award for young adult and children's books that show cultural understanding or are teaching people about the culture of Southeast and East Asian countries. So I think that is really cool as well. My biggest issue with this book is that some of the dialogue was a little unrealistic, and for that, for me, mostly is the fact that the main character of Skylar is American. She's only going to be in Japan for about 3 months, and within the first couple days of going, she knows words in Japanese that she might not have known otherwise. When she goes to a Japanese class to learn Japanese, I can understand her learning certain words, using them, trying to use them out and about when she's walking around town and everything like that, that's fine. But there got to be a point where she would take certain words like secret and house, and in her head, instead of saying things like that, she would say them in Japanese, but she would insert the one little Japanese word in her thoughts in between all the other English words. For me personally, I've learned some words in Chinese, and there is no way, even when I was in China, that I personally was going to be thinking my own thoughts in my own head to myself and actively translating Chinese into my thoughts. It just wasn't really happening. So, and again, this could just be my opinion, and it could be something that just happened to me, but I felt some of it was a little unrealistic in that fact, because sometimes even the author wouldn't necessarily give us the English translation of the Japanese phrase. We would just have it over and over again. I had to look some of it up on Google Translate to see if I could at least get a hint of what it was. Otherwise, I do think this is a really, really good novel if you want to learn some more Japanese, or if you want to pick up a little bit of what's going on, because I do remember those words. She said the word for secret in Japanese so much in this book that I know what that word is now. But overall, I think this is a really good story. Because it is a contemporary romance, it was a little slow to start out. I do think it got much better about halfway through the book, and I do wish I had a little bit more from the author that was closer to the last half of the book than the first half of the book. This is her first work, so I am looking forward to more by her. And I do think this is one you guys should give a try if you're looking for any sort of like cultural understanding about Japan with people traveling over there. If you have been to Japan, I would also like to know from you guys if this is close to what your experience was, just because I'm pretty sure the author has been there and this was her experience, but not everybody's experience is going to be the same. But I did like this one as well. I am looking forward to more by this author. So this is probably longer than it needed to be, but I hope you guys liked this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up to let me know. Subscribe to this channel if you would like to see more videos. I have new videos up every Monday and Thursday, so I will see you then. Bye!